Hi, I'm Stephen Bronk. I'm a soloist here at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. I've been here for 13 seasons now and singing professionally for good 42 years. And I would like to take this opportunity to talk with you about components of vocal management. I don't know who comes up with these titles. I guess I did in this case. But what I'd like to talk to you about, just in general terms, are the different aspects of vocal management. And as I have done in the past 4 episodes, we've covered various aspects, that of body centering, breathing, support, hygiene, nutrition, care of the instrument, and things like that. And what I'd like to talk about today is the part of the instrument that most of us focus on, which is the larynx and the pharynx. Okay, so the larynx. The larynx obviously is this part of the throat here. It's a cartilage of varying sizes, and it's basically there to protect the vocal cords. And the pharynx is what we also refer to as the vocal tract. Now, the pharynx extends from the larynx up until the back of your throat, and then forward until the lips. That is the pharynx or vocal tract. And there's really not much else as far as resonators in our body. So when we're singing, when we're speaking, when we are making noise of any kind, what we're doing is we are using the vocal tract in a myriad of ways. Of course, what is most important for singers is that the vocal tract is always in a position that will allow us to emit the kind of sound that we would like to. The further down the larynx goes, the longer the pharynx becomes. Okay, so the larynx goes down, then the vocal tract is longer. The larynx comes up, then of course it is shorter. And in order to get an idea, just again, as I mentioned last time, we have a way of looking, not, we have to use a mirror, but of looking into our own mouths and seeing what's going on in this part. We have no idea exactly what's going on here. We can only feel what's going on in this part. In other words, much or almost all of what happens during singing is not visible. And as such, we depend on sensations. We depend on feelings. We depend on adjustments that we make. If you compare, for instance, talking like this and talking like this, okay? These are two very different ways of saying the same thing, but with a very different effect each time. The reason being is that I will change the vocal tract and everything that is involved in order to make that difference. These are very small adjustments. They are very fine, and we have to figure out how to implement them to get the effects that we would like. But as I like to explain sometimes for students, the wonderful, I don't know if you can see this, but we have these lovely plaster moldings on our ceiling, and they were not the beginning of the construction. What had to come first were mortars and brick, you know, and they had to build walls, and then they had to put something on that, and then they had to put something over that, and then plaster that, and then they could start putting on the ornaments, okay? And basically, this is how we have to think about the way we build up our voices. We don't start with the molding, okay? We don't start with the art. We start with the mortars and the brick. We start by getting the walls nice and smooth. We start by priming them and getting something on them so that the plaster will hold, and then we can start thinking about the ornaments and everything, okay? So what I want to talk about is mortar and brick today. Any of you who are really interested in finding out more about how the voice works, how the body works together with the voice, and vice versa, I urge you to visit a site that I found and found incredibly informative and very, very interesting. There's a lot of science that, okay, it's interesting to know. It's not really that necessary, but there are a lot of other things that are very, very well described, and it's worthwhile looking into. It's called Voice Science Works. VoiceScienceWorks.org. Okay. When I put this video up, I'll add that link so that you can click on it and get some information. Very, very helpful, as I think, and with a lot of information. It's amazing sometimes how misinformed or ill-informed sometimes singers can be about the way the instrument works. And this site, and hopefully some of my insights, will help you to understand that better. So, as I said before, the larynx goes down, the pharynx elongates, and that means we have more room, okay? Now there are two parts, let's say, of the pharynx. Although it is one contiguous or continuous thing, okay, going from the larynx all the way up to here, all right? There are two, let's say, chambers, okay? One chamber we're very much aware of is the one from the base of the tongue here forward to the lips. The other part is behind the soft palate and downward until the larynx. So there are two chambers. They both work together. And what we as singers want to be able to do is use 100% of the pharynx, okay, in everything that we do. There might be some special effects where we center on something else, but for now, let's just talk about these two chambers, okay? Again, what I've said before about communication being key to what we do, I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit. The development of language, okay, is one of the greatest prerequisites for singing. There can be no spoken or sung communication unless there is language. And language evolved from sounds that we began to make in order to describe things. And most of these sounds, let's say 10,000 years ago, were derived from nature. In other words, you heard a bird and you want to copy the bird, so you go, ah, ah, something like that. And you want to tell someone else, I just saw a, ah, ah. Imagine that, you know. Or a, hoo, 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 or a, ah, 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 things like that. This is all part of a language, a precursor to the languages that we know. But what's very important about it is to remember that it's because of our need and desire to communicate that we human beings came up with languages in the first place. And singing necessarily needs to be and is a part of this volition, okay? We sing because we want to communicate. And what is it exactly we wish to communicate? Some people think that singing is communicating, I have a beautiful voice, look at me, okay? That works for a certain amount of time, and after a while it becomes just a little boring, because as in everything, unless you're in a museum looking at art the whole day, you can get kind of tired of one thing happening all the time. What we as human beings are more interested in is hearing subtext, discovering intentions with our ears. We look at people, we listen to people, and we see exactly what it is they're trying to communicate, maybe what it is they're trying to not communicate. It interests us. It makes us curious as to what is happening between myself and this other person. And singing is all about that. Just as your instrument is your whole body, singing has to be an expression of your whole body. And that includes your emotions, your sentiments. So we need, as singers, to be very, very close to those things. We need to explore the emotional palette that we have in order to be able to paint in different colors. There are people who can be sad, but also very happy. Or they can be laughing, but they're very sad. Or they can be angry, but pretending to be very cool. There are all of these different facets, and these need to be expressed by the voice. Certainly, postures will help to bring across the ideas that we have. But don't be fooled by anything else. It is our ear that discerns what is really truthfully being told. And that is exactly what we need to be doing. So that being said, and keeping in mind that it's all about the communication, we have to think about the primal beginnings, okay, which are how to prepare everything in order to get closer to that. When I talked about support and breathing, I think it was in the third installment, one of the things that I mentioned was yawning. Yawning is very, very good for us because when we yawn, automatically the larynx goes down. We don't have to push, we don't have to pull, it just happens. And the greatest thing about yawning is that you can replicate that feeling because you know what it feels like to yawn. In other words, to do that, you don't need to be yawning. Some of you might start doing it anyway right now. And the other thing that yawning does is connects us directly to the support system. And this is a big prerequisite for what is to come. I will be talking in the next installment and going directly into the way we make sound and how that works together. And just to give you an idea of what is in store, I hope this works, is this. So I start out by just saying, very, very simply, just saying, ah, 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 and at the same time thinking to myself, it's kind of a feeling of, oh, oh, you know, this is so nice, it's just so pleasant. Ah, you know, that sigh of contentment, you know? And so you sort of go like, ah, ah, and then giving it the full measure. Ah, and taking away the volume as much as possible so that you get to a certain point where this happens. And so on. Next time, we will get into that. And as always, I look forward to your suggestions. I look forward to your comments and to your questions. And I'm Stephen Bronk. And whatever your musical genre is, I can help you.